All set.
Thanks, Debbie. Hello, everybody. At 7:00 p.m. on Thursday, March 24th, I'd like to call the Town Council Rules and Procedures Committee to order. Councilors Moore, George, and Souza are present, so we have quorum. Deborah Ward is going to be recording minutes. The meeting will be recorded remotely via Zoom or conducted remotely via Zoom. We encourage any interested citizens to participate via the link and phone number posted in the agenda. With that, we have our first item of business is approval of meeting minutes from January 27th, 2002. I would entertain a motion to approve. Great.
Second.
Excellent. So we have a second. Roll call vote. Councilor George?
Yes.
Councilor Souza?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. The motion passes 3 in favor, 0 against. All right. The next item we have is public comment. See, we do have one member of the public. Do we have anyone from the public who would like to comment? Anyone from the public who would like to comment? Okay. Seeing none, I will close out public comment and we'll move on to discussion. We have none tonight. So with that, I'll close out discussion and we'll move on to legislation referred. The first item we have is Ordinance D FY22-002. This is the Bridgewater Town Charter Amendment correction of typographical and punctuation errors. So just a quick reminder, it has been a little while since our workshop, but at our Town Council workshop held on February 8th about the charter changes, we agreed to deprioritize the typographical errors and defer them to a later date. We talked about sort of focusing on the high priority items first, and then over time we might tackle some of these other things. So if we wanted to continue with that, that was just part of the discussion there. We could potentially, I think, maybe return this with a motion not to recommend. Just kind of given the size and the number of changes we would need to make there and the potential delay to the other things that we have already worked on. I don't know, Sean or Frank, if you have an idea or a thought on this one.
Well, I guess my question would be, where is it best served to just stay in committee and make a motion to put this on a future agenda, date certain, instead of sending it back to the council, recommending that we're not recommending it, but for the mere reason that we just haven't had enough time nor help to really go through it. I would think keeping it in committee would probably be the right move, but that's just my personal opinion.
Okay. Frank, did you have a thought too on this?
How will it affect the rest of what we're doing? Will it slow it down or affect it that we wouldn't be able to get it approved?
Yeah, I think that there were a few elements to this. So for the items that we've already gone through, the changes have been made as part of those ordinances that were that are on queue to go back to the council. The remaining changes, there's a variety of them. Some of them are like number changes, so from 15 days to 30 days. Some of them are title changes. So I think the concern is they do have the potential of potentially altering the language of the charter if we make the change. And my only thinking is, if we keep it here, the item that we have in front of us is really general. It basically just says make all of those types of changes. Whereas what we potentially could do is kill this instance of the suggestion, and maybe we in committee start tackling Article 1, and then we do like Article 2 in the next meeting and Article 3, and maybe just kind of like figure out another way to work through these instead of like this one thing that is just all encompassing for the whole charter. That was my only thinking. Not that we shouldn't do it, but we shouldn't do it with like that language that's in front of us. I don't know. And maybe Sean, maybe a follow-up question for you. If we do keep it here, and you maybe just kind of, do you have any thoughts on how we would actually like work through that? Would we just sort of start at the top of the charter and start making changes as part of
I mean,
that?
I think what we had kind of discussed, but you've got to get more bodies, is basically going through and giving, the first 10 changes to this group, the next 10, the next 10. I thought we talked about that, where in consortium you have 3 groups, 4 including us, if we could get that many, working on different sections, so that when they cut, hopefully the thought is to get them all back either at the same time or say consecutive meetings, to be able to go through a final review and recommendation. But that, that may be something, to your earlier point, that we have to discuss at the council from that perspective. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Either way, I mean, if it goes back to the council with a recommendation not to move forward, I'm fine with that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I do like your idea.
We just have to be overt at the fact that we're not trying to kill this, where, we just need to kind of re-strategize on how we're going to approach it, because it's just so many nuances to it.
Yeah. I do like that. And I think we had also talked about maybe like a timeline for these changes, where this first batch of really impactful changes, we push ahead now. And then maybe we look for next year, to get some of these other ones ready for next year's ballot, and add a few more, and then some for the following year's ballot. Is that still, does that approach still make sense? And maybe we could look at these for the next round instead of holding up the ones we've already made progress on?
Yeah, I would say we could, in my opinion, the next 2 that we have on our agenda, I think we could move forward on those, on top of sending back the grammatical changes with that explanation. And then at the council level, if we want to have a discussion on what's left on the table for the charter changes and how we're going to go about completing those, over the next 6 months, year, whatever the case may be. And then they come back to us in whatever, strategy there is, because we still have more charter changes in the. Are these the only ones we have left?
Yeah,
referred to us?
These are the only ones that are left. Everything else we have made a decision on.
Okay.
And just with Matt, we're just holding on them so we can kind of tackle them all in the meeting.
So this is what I would recommend. My personal opinion is to send, hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself, so I apologize. And I'm looking at it on my phone, which is always fun. My recommendation would be for FY 22-002 to recommend not to recommend, obviously with the explanation that we just had.
Yeah.
I'd also recommend moving forward and making some sort of decision on 04 and 05. I personally don't think those are dependent on the grammatical changes that can come down the road. But I think we should try to get those back with whatever the decision is for those other 2.
I like that too. And then that would essentially clear this round. And then we come up with the strategy for the next round as a follow-up.
Yep.
I like that. Frank, do you have thoughts on that one?
Oh, I agree with him on that. I think it's
okay. So I think with that in mind, for D FY 22-002,
I'll make a motion to not recommend, to send back to the council and not recommend.
All right, I will
second that motion, but do you want to add an explanation to that, or wait till you get to the council?
Well, I think the way Eric just talked about in regards to sending it back, not with a recommendation not to move forward on the changes, but we have to figure out a better way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I can second it for discussion when it comes back up, and then I can explain it. Eric can explain it. Frank, you can explain it. On exactly why we did what we did. So
perfect. Okay, so I think we have a motion on the table to not recommend.
And I second that.
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote. Sean,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So the motion to not recommend passes 3 in favor, 0 against. The next one, D FY 22-004, is the town charter article about elected officials, library trustees. Just to maybe reacclimate us to this one, since it's been a little while. There were some big concerns about this. I'm just looking at my notes here. We essentially had 3 types of issues with this that we were thinking through. The first was just consistency in naming, which I think we've addressed, and I have a version that just uses the same terminology that I got from a few different places. So I think that one's addressed. The other 2 were actually bigger concerns. And the first was there's language in there about the hiring rights of the library trustees. And the concern here is that they conflict with other charter language that essentially gives the town manager hiring rights. So I think it's not necessarily that we wouldn't, if people supported, the library hiring, that we wouldn't, I think we would just need to figure out a different way to do that than the language that's in here. So that was the second concern. Excuse me. And then the third one was financial powers. The language does give the library board of trustees direct decision rights over the funds that are raised from the sale of books and surplus and a few other things. Also, even if you're in favor of that or against it, the challenge is it does conflict with the town council's rights, sort of having approval over the use of funds. So I think this is a tricky one. If we sent it back as is, we would probably have some conflicts with those 2 pieces, the hiring rights and the financial powers. And I think if we really wanted to tackle this, I think we almost need to sort of rethink the language and maybe borrow some approaches from some other towns that have given more independence to the library board of trustees. So that's just my little preamble on that one.
Can I say a little bit on that financial one?
Yeah, please.
The council we're mostly dealing with taxpayer money or a direct donation. But this is something when they're selling the books and doing things like that, that's a fundraiser type of thing that they're conducting, and the reason why. And do they turn that money back in to the town, or do they keep it in their own treasury? I think that's what we should look at. And if it's in their own treasury because they did it on their own, maybe they should have control of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do like the fact that they would have the ability to kind of raise their own money and manage that for the library.
Mm-hmm.
I think my concern is just the way that this is legally structured might not actually support that. Let's see, it says, this is like some language from the town attorney. So the language relative to financial control and duties directly contradicts and usurps the town council's current authority to handle funds and budgets. And then I think the language also talks about the money sort of being in the treasury of the town and handled by the treasurer. So that's where I'm thinking, Frank, I also like the idea of them being able to do stuff. I just wonder if we should get some guidance on how to create a legal structure where that can happen.
You can ask the town attorney to see, get his opinion on this. He is our legal advisor.
Yeah. So I can reach out to him again. Another thing that might be interesting is, and actually I probably need guidance from both of you on this, would it make sense for us to maybe have a joint meeting with the trustees of the public library and just kind of hear a little bit more about what they're trying to do so that we're pushing forward the right language for them?
Well, is this coming from the trustees themselves, or is this coming from public input from the Charter Review Committee?
I think it's both. I think my understanding is it was input from at least some of the trustees. I don't know that it was all of them. Interpreted by the charter committee and turned into language by the charter review committee. And I don't think there was sort of any legals kind of processes.
Yeah. Personally, on this, where I would get guidance, and Frank, I'll go in a little bit of a different direction. I'm not trying to
No, that's okay.
say you're wrong. We may want to find out if there's any way that you can give financial power / responsibility to the library trustees. And I think to your point, Frank, like if they're selling books, like, you know how they sell old books and things like
Right,
that,
yeah.
for argument's sake, if the town purchased the books, then the trustees are selling town assets. If a town asset sold, it needs to go to the treasurer directly. Now, if they're doing a fundraiser, right, pure fundraiser, then I think you've got some leeway there because the fees are not generated by the sale of any, and I say books, quote unquote, town assets, that they may have some, discretion on or things of that nature. But Eric, I mean, and I understand the idea too. I'd love to see more committees be empowered at the right time. But I think the question to Jason is there a way? And if there's no way to do it, then we need to pull it out because we can't put something in front of the voters that can't happen. If he said we can do it, then it gets, then we have to figure out what the limitations are. But he may turn around and say, you just can't do it. And that's what it is. So,
yeah. And to go down that path of, just kind of reopening this as, legally, how do you set up these sorts of relationships? And then we could look at what that comes back with. Would we do that as an amendment to this one? Or would this be a similar sort of thing where as written, we can't push it forward? It requires significant change. And so
no, we can make the changes and present it, and we can put in the notes that we did make changes from the original that was sent down to us.
Okay.
And there's actually two ways of doing it, to be honest. We could do it in committee, or if you wanted to, it could go back up to the town council. You support or whatever, but you could also amend it at the town council meeting to have that discussion to see what people think about making any changes that we foresee. And I don't think I'm wrong, but there's if you do that, then the council's, well, outside of us and whoever's on, we'll see it for the first time at a meeting. Very, very tough time with something like that. If we do it in committee and submit it with the package, then people are going to get it, 3 days in advance, and at least they'll be able to see, we can present it with the changes, but obviously would be approving as changed, or you can give someone a red line version or things like that so that you can see what we took out, what we added, and then a clean version of how it would stand as we recommend it.
Got it. I like that idea of us maybe then working through it. I'm just thinking maybe who else should we invite to our next meeting just to make sure we have the right input there. I imagine some discussion with whoever's representing the library board of trustees, and then have Jason here as well. And then maybe a little bit of homework before that to have some proposals.
What about the charter review committee? Because don't forget, all this is coming from them to us. And they were involved in it all. So maybe the library trustees, them and ourselves, Jason.
No, I hear you, but not.
Yeah.
I mean, now we're talking about a bigger meeting too.
Yeah. Well, it could be just one person from the charter review committee.
Yeah, I think Ed, I'm sure, would probably be willing to come.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if we can get one person from trustees, one from the charter review committee, Jason, and the three of us, and anyone else who wants to join to watch, I think would work.
Yeah, and I could
But
even between now and then, just kind of start some discussions with those different roles to try to just bring the right information to this group.
Right, but the other thing too, though, what you may want to consider, like I said, if Jason says we can't do the financial aspect, then all we're doing is eliminating the language that we can't move forward. So people that come also have to understand that we may be obligated to make changes, whether they agree with it or not, because it conflicts with the charter. So we just have to set the parameters, because I think after that, for the most part, I don't see anything controversial. I keep looking at it.
Yeah, I
So-
think those are the two things, the money
Yeah.
and the ability for them to approve the hire.
Yeah. And I mean,
Mhm.
that if they can't happen because of the charter, then we just pull them out. We're not making a decision, we're cleaning it out.
Yeah.
So that's where I think it gets a little tricky. If we already know ahead of time that those can't move forward because of legal reasons, then we may just want to let people know ahead of time. They can come in and love to hear them, but we may be obligated to move forward with the changes that we got a legal opinion on.
Okay, so why don't I find that out? And assuming if the legal opinion is, yeah, there might be a way, we just kind of have to design it together, then it probably makes sense for the meeting. If it's just a no, then we can, to your point, come back and just kind of edit this down to remove those pieces.
Excuse me. Yep.
All right. And then, so I guess for this one, I would entertain a motion to postpone to our next scheduled meeting.
So moved.
Second,
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Sean,
Yes.
Frank,
yes.
and I am a yes. It passes 3 in favor, 0 against. All right, so the next one we have is ordinance D FY 22-005, Bridgewater Town Charter, Town to City Amendment. So just a quick refresher on this one. If we wanted to push this forward to the point where it could be bundled with the other things and move on to the state, we would need to go through every instance in the charter and describe the change. I think in our charter workshop, the town council was not speaking favorably about this. So I think an option we could do is send this back to the town council as is, and with a recommendation, if you supported it, not to move forward, and maybe let us vote at the council level on this, or make a motion.
I'll make that motion to not recommend and send back to the council.
Okay.
Second that.
Perfect. So we'll do a roll call vote. Sean,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. So that's 3 yeses. The motion passes. Okay, so I think that's it. I think that brings us to the point where we adjourn. I'll do a little homework on this and get us set up for the next agenda to act on that remaining FY 22-004. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Sean,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and I am a yes. All right, thanks guys, appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Have a nice evening.
You
Have a
too.
good night, everyone.
Yeah,
Right.
Good night, Debbie.
Bye-bye.
Abby.